They called the human ship a coffin before it even finished docking, not because it was broken, not because it was drifting, but because every scanner in the luminous Concord reported the same impossible truth. The vessel had crossed the black current without a soul net, without living crystal engines, without a star priest to sing it through the dark, and without a crew large enough to qualify as sentient by Concord law. It was a narrow iron thing, scarred by radiation, patched with plates from a dozen construction yards, burning a dirty blue exhaust that made the elegant alien traffic controllers recoil in disgust. And inside that coffin, Captain Mara Vance looked at the largest space station humanity had ever seen and quietly said, "Well, they noticed us." The station was called the Crown of Sol. It hung above a violet gas giant like a city built by gods who had grown bored with mountains. Rings of silver habitat petals rotated around a central tower wider than Earth's moon, each ring glittering with embassy lights, diplomatic cruisers, pleasure barges, war banners, trade arcs, and temple ships so vast that the human vessel looked like a nail clipping caught in a cathedral window. The human ship, UNSS Resolute, was not beautiful. It had been assembled in lunar dry dock, reinforced in the asteroid belt, stripped down above Titan, rebuilt after the Neptune slingshot, and finally launched toward a gravity scar that no one on Earth had been able to fully explain. Its hull still carried scorch marks from the failed first jump. Its main spine had a visible bend that engineers insisted was within tolerance. Its faster-than-light core was less a graceful engine than a controlled violation of several laws of physics. It had no singing crystal, no biological navigator, no sanctioned void membrane. It had a crew of 43 humans, 6 repair drones, and a brass coin taped above the command console because Lieutenant Arjun Pike said his grandmother had blessed it before launch. The Concorde did not know what to do with it. "Traffic control has rejected our docking request again," said Dr. Sienna Holt from the communications station. Her voice was calm, but her fingers had stopped moving. This time the translation says, "Unregistered debris cluster must clear ceremonial approach lanes." A few officers laughed, but nobody laughed very hard. Captain Mara Vance leaned forward in her chair. She was 42 years old, compact, dark-eyed, and carried herself with the frightening stillness of someone who had learned early that panic wasted oxygen. A thin scar crossed her left eyebrow from the Europa pressure breach. Her uniform was formal navy black, but her boots were combat boots, because she had never trusted polished shoes on unknown ground. "Send the greeting packet again," she said. "Already sent it 12 times. "Send it 13. Sienna obeyed. Mathematics, chemistry, biological profile, language roots, peaceful contact declaration, United Nations mandate, diplomatic request, and the Beethoven file. "Good," Mara said. Lieutenant Pike turned from navigation. "Captain, station defense grid has painted us with 27 targeting beams." "Only 27? 31. Sorry, 4 were behind the embassy ring." Mara smiled faintly. "Then we're moving up in the world." The station finally answered. Not with words. A tractor beam seized the Resolute with such sudden force that every human on the bridge lurched forward against their harnesses. Warning lights flashed. The hull groaned like a whale under ice. A docking arm the size of a suspension bridge extended from the underside of the Crown and dragged the human ship toward what appeared to be a waste disposal port. Pike stared at the display. "Captain, they're putting us in a refuse reclamation bay." "Is it pressurized?" "Yes." "Does it have a door?" "Yes." "Then it's a dock." 5 minutes later, the first human diplomatic party stood before the airlock. Mara Vance adjusted the cuffs of her dress jacket. Beside her, Dr. Sienna Holt carried a hard case full of language processors and emergency medical samplers. Behind them stood 6 United Nations Expeditionary Marines in matte gray armor, their rifles magnet-locked to their backs but loaded, because optimism and stupidity were not the same thing. The airlock opened. The first thing Mara felt was lightness. The Crown of Sol ran at 0.32 Earth gravity. Every movement threatened to become a jump. Every step required restraint. Her body, born and trained under Earth's stubborn pull, suddenly felt like a weapon waiting for permission. The second thing she felt was insult. The docking bay was enormous. Too enormous. a cavern of polished white stone and suspended gardens, apparently repurposed only at the last moment for the human arrival. Their vessel sat beneath a sign that, after 3 seconds of translation, read, "Irregular mineral sample intake." Waiting for them were the Elirothi. They were tall, radiant beings, nearly 4 meters high, with translucent limbs, long feathered crests, and bodies that seemed designed to make every movement look like a ceremony. Their skin shimmered in colors that shifted with mood: pearl, gold, pale green, soft blue. They wore layered robes of liquid fabric and floated slightly above the floor with the help of delicate gravity harnesses. At their center stood Chancellor Vera Soluan, presiding envoy of the luminous Concord. She looked down at Mara, then farther down, then farther still. A faint ripple passed through her crest. The translator rendered it as amusement. "So," Chancellor Vera said, her voice emerging as a flawless musical contralto, "the metallic fragment contains occupants." The Elirothi behind her made small chiming sounds. Laughter. Sienna's handheld translator whispered. Mara kept her face neutral. "Captain Mara Vance, commanding officer of the United Nations Starship Resolute. We come on behalf of Earth and its colonies to establish peaceful relations with the luminous Concord." The Chancellor lowered her elegant head until her luminous eyes hovered just above Mara's face. "Peaceful relations. Yes. With you. With humanity." Another ripple of chiming laughter passed through the docking bay. The Chancellor gestured to the Resolute. "Your craft is chemically propelled in secondary systems, thermally scarred, structurally asymmetrical, and radiating enough primitive fusion leakage to distress the ornamental moss. Your species has arrived without escort, without pedigree, without recognized transcendence markers, and without an adult representative." Mara blinked once. "An adult representative?" Vera's crest brightened. "Surely you are juveniles." One of the Marines behind Mara exhaled very slowly. Sienna cleared her throat. "Human adults average between 1 and 2 meters in height. Our size reflects evolutionary development under higher planetary gravity, long-distance mobility demands, and thermoregulation constraints." The Chancellor turned her luminous gaze to Sienna. "The small one makes academic sounds." More laughter. Mara felt it then, not anger exactly, but the tightening of something deep and old, the same feeling that had carried sailors into storms, climbers up dead mountains, miners into collapsing shafts, and medics across battlefields under fire. The awareness that something large had mistaken patience for weakness. "We request formal recognition," Mara said. Vera's robes fluttered as she turned away. "You may request many things. The Concord is generous. It has parks, museums, curiosity vaults, and educational enclosures. I am certain an appropriate location can be found for your delegation." "Educational enclosures," Sienna repeated. "Do not be offended," Vera said, though her voice made it clear that offense would be amusing. "The Concord cherishes unusual life. Even underdeveloped species have value. Children often enjoy resilient creatures." The Marines went still, not tense, not visibly angry. Still. Mara noticed Vera noticed that stillness and misunderstood it as fear. "Come," the Chancellor said. "The convocation is assembled. You may observe from the lesser gallery, provided your biological systems can tolerate the atmosphere." The walk to the convocation hall became a parade. Aliens emerged from side passages and balconies to stare at the humans. Some had bodies like sculpted coral. Some moved in floating clusters of gas-filled membranes. Some resembled armored centipedes wrapped in jeweled chains. Others were towering avian philosophers, crystalline economists, furred aquatic nobles inside mobile tanks, and vine-like ambassadors whose flowers opened and closed with each pulse of thought. All of them were larger, much larger. Several recorded the humans openly. One child from a delegation of blue-skinned giants pointed with all 4 hands and shouted something the translator rendered as, "Look, the walking embryos have clothes." The adults laughed. Mara kept walking. Sienna leaned closer. "This is going badly." "Yes. They think we're animals." "Not animals," Mara said. "Novelties. That's worse. Usually. The convocation hall of the luminous Concord was not a room. It was weather-given architecture, a vast open sphere of balconies, platforms, floating seats, holographic galleries, suspended gardens, and radiant speaking circles revolved around a central light well that dropped so far Mara could not see the bottom. Thousands of delegates filled the chamber. Millions more appeared as remote projections. Every surface glowed with symbols older than human agriculture. When the humans entered, the entire hall changed. Conversations faltered. Heads turned, optics focused, crests lifted, mandibles clicked. Then the laughter began. It rolled through the sphere in waves. Chimes, rumbles, whistles, hisses, harmonic pulses, wet clicking, bell tones, ultrasonic shrieks. The translator politely muted. Holographic displays magnified the human delegation and projected comparative size charts beside them. Average Concord delegate height, 3.9 meters. Average human height, 1.72 meters. Projected threat index, negligible. Recommended handling protocol, gentle containment. A section of insectoid trade ministers began placing wagers on whether humans could climb the steps to the lesser gallery without assistance. The steps were each nearly half a meter high. Mara climbed them without using her hands. So did Sienna. So did the Marines. The laughter dipped for 3 seconds, then returned louder. They were placed inside a transparent observation enclosure halfway up the hall. It had no chairs suitable for human bodies, only a smooth, curved shelf that came up to Mara's chest. The voting interface hovered above them at a height no human could reach without jumping. Sienna stared up at it. That feels intentional. Mara looked across the chamber. Chancellor Vera had taken the central speaking light. Her crest shimmered with public amusement. Honored delegates, Vera announced. The Concord receives today a charming anomaly from beyond the cartographer's veil. A minor bipedal species calling itself humanity has arrived in a self-propelled container and believes itself prepared for interstellar society. The hall erupted again. Mara heard Marine Corporal Della Ruiz whisper, "Give me 10 minutes and a ladder." "Stand down," Mara said. "I didn't say what I'd do with the ladder." That was implied. The Chancellor continued. Their request for recognition will, of course, be preserved in the archives of developmental ambition. Until proper classification, I recommend provisional status as protected pre-civic life. Mara stepped toward the enclosure wall. We have independent faster-than-light capability. We crossed 92 light years. Her voice did not carry. The enclosure dampened it. Sienna looked at the wall, then at her case. I can bypass the local audio filter. Do it. Sienna opened the case. Before she touched a tool, the hall went silent. It was not the silence of respect. It was the silence of a forest when birds vanish. The floating platforms slowed. The holograms flickered. The great radiant light well dimmed from gold to cold blue. Around the chamber, dozens of enormous beings began backing away from the central entrance arch. Mara turned. "What changed?" she asked. Pike, watching through the feed from the Resolute, answered in her earpiece. "Captain, I'm reading a new vessel dropping out of fold above the station." "No, not a vessel. Sorry. Multiple mass signatures. They're nested. Maybe one ship. Maybe a fleet pretending to be one ship." Sienna checked her scanner. Her face lost color. Every species in the room just spiked stress hormones. The central doors opened. They did not slide. They did not part. They were pushed inward. The being that entered the convocation hall was larger than any delegate Mara had seen. Not taller by much, perhaps 5 meters, but massed differently. Where the Elirothi were elegant and elongated, this creature was compact, brutal, and terrifyingly solid. It walked on 2 heavy legs, each step ringing through the chamber. Its skin was not skin, but overlapping plates of dark, basalt-colored armor, natural and scarred. 4 thick arms hung from its torso. Its head was broad and low, with a crown of broken horns and 6 deep-set eyes glowing like banked coals. It wore no robes. It wore chains made from the hull fragments of destroyed warships. Behind it came 12 more like it, each armed with weapons that looked less manufactured than grown by volcanic anger. The translator found a designation after 3 seconds. Korovai. then another, unbound warclade, then a third, blinking in warning red, extinction-level combat species, diplomatic caution mandatory. The chamber bowed, not all at once and not willingly, but it bowed. Chancellor Vera descended from the speaking light, her colors shifting from gold to a frightened silver white. "Highbreaker Rogar," she said, voice suddenly thin. "The Concord welcomes the honored shield of the outer dark." The giant did not answer. Highbreaker Rogar scanned the hall slowly. His 6 eyes moved from delegation to delegation, as if weighing each species for slaughter and finding most not worth the effort. Vera tried again. "Your arrival was not scheduled, Honored One. Had we known, tribute protocols." Rogar raised one hand. The Chancellor stopped speaking. The silence deepened. Then, in a voice like stones grinding under an avalanche, Rogar said, something crossed the black current. The entire hall seemed to shrink. Vera's crest fluttered violently. "A minor anomaly, Highbreaker, a harmless arrival. We are processing it now." Rogar's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The Chancellor hesitated. That hesitation was the first honest thing Mara had seen from her. Vera lifted one graceful arm toward the lesser gallery. "There, Honored One, the small biologicals. They call themselves humans." A few delegates, desperate to recover favor, released nervous laughter. "They arrived in a crude iron capsule," Vera continued, forcing lightness into her tone. "Without proper fold song, without gravitic lineage, without even a functional size profile. We believe they may be useful as educational specimens." Rogar turned, his 6 eyes fixed on the human enclosure. The laughter died so completely that Mara heard her own heartbeat. The giant moved. He did not climb the gallery steps. He crossed the chamber floor, reached the base of the balcony, drove 4 claws into the polished wall, and pulled himself upward with horrifying ease. Stone cracked under his grip. Delegates scattered as fragments rained down. He landed before the transparent enclosure. The Marines shifted. Rogar noticed. Mara noticed him notice. He leaned close to the barrier. His breath fogged the surface in heavy pulses. Then he lifted one hand and tapped the enclosure with a single claw. The transparent wall exploded inward. The shockwave threw Sienna back against the shelf. A Marine caught her before she hit the floor. The others formed instantly around Mara, weapons still locked but hands ready, feet placed, angles covered. Rogar stared at them. Mara stepped forward. She knew what the hall expected. She could feel it in the air. They expected screaming, running, pleading. Perhaps the messy spectacle of a primitive species discovering its place beneath the claws of something older and stronger. Mara did not scream. She looked up into 6 burning eyes and said, "You broke our window." The translator carried it across the chamber. Nobody laughed. Rogar lowered his massive head until his face was close enough that Mara could see old scars crossing the plates around his eyes. The giant inhaled. Once. Twice. A low vibration rolled through his chest. Sienna, still held upright by the Marine, whispered, "Captain, I think he's smelling us." "Let him." Rogar's 6 eyes changed focus. He looked at Mara's stance, at her hands, at the tendons in her neck, at the scar over her eyebrow, at the Marines behind her who had not stepped back despite standing within reach of something that could tear them apart. He looked at their armor plates, their compact frames, the way they breathed through fear without letting it command them. Then his gaze lowered to Mara's boots. He stared at the floor beneath them. "Your bones," he said. The translator hesitated, then repeated it. "Your bones are loud." Mara said nothing. Rogar inhaled again, deeper this time. Iron blood, salt water, burnt carbon, old disease, old hunger, old war. The hall remained frozen. Rogar's nostrils flared. Not station-born, not garden-born, not low pull. His eyes snapped to Chancellor Vera. The force of that stare made several Elirothi guards drift backward. "You laughed at them," Rogar said. Vera's mouthparts trembled. "Honored Breaker, they are undeveloped. Their vessel is crude. Their scale is—" "Scale," Rogar growled. The word struck the hall like a weapon. He turned back to Mara. Very slowly, the largest and most feared warlord in the convocation lowered himself. One knee hit the broken balcony floor with a thunderous crack, then another. The giant bowed his horned head until it was level with Mara's. Across the convocation hall, thousands of delegates stared in collective disbelief. Rogar extended one massive hand, palm upward, not toward Mara's throat, not toward her weapon, toward the floor between them. A gesture, an offering, a recognition. "When we left Korra," Rogar said, his voice lower now but somehow carrying farther, "we believed no other thinking thing had climbed from a world that hated it." The translator struggled with the last phrase, then corrected itself. A world that hunted its own children. Rogar's eyes burned brighter. "Your gravity pressed you small. Your storms taught you fear. Your predators taught you eyes in the dark. Your winters taught you planning. Your wars taught you invention. Your dead taught you memory." He looked toward the convocation. "They see little bodies and think little strength. They see crude engines and think crude minds. They do not understand compression." His hand closed into a fist and stopped in front of Mara. Stone under pressure becomes blade. Mara looked at the fist, then at him. Then she lifted her own hand and struck her knuckles against the massive armored plates. The sound was small. In the silence it carried everywhere. Rogar's mouth opened, revealing teeth like broken obsidian. "Kin found," he rumbled. The chamber erupted, but not in laughter. Fear spread faster than sound. Delegates recoiled from their platforms. Remote projections flickered as worlds cut their feeds and reconnected in panic. Chancellor Vera looked as though the laws of the universe had publicly betrayed her. The humans had entered the crown as debris. They had just been recognized by the species the Concord feared too much to insult. Mara lowered her fist. Rogar rose to his full height. "You came to ask for a chair," he said. Mara glanced at the unreachable voting interface. "Something like that." The giant turned toward the central light. "Then take one." The path from the lesser gallery to the convocation floor became the longest walk of Mara Vance's life. Not because she was afraid, because every step rewrote reality. The same delegates who had leaned over balconies to laugh now pulled themselves out of her way. Those too slow were moved by Korovai guards, not gently. Chancellor Vera hovered near the speaking light, struggling to regain control of a ceremony that had slipped from her fingers and become something much older than law. "Highbreaker," she said, forcing composure into each syllable. "Recognition is not yours to grant." Rogar stopped beside the central podium. "No." Relief flickered across Vera's face. Then Rogar continued. "It is yours to deny at your peril." Mara stepped onto the speaking platform. It rose automatically, but not enough. The control system stopped when her face remained below the standard projection field. A soft warning appeared. Speaker height insufficient. Sienna, who had followed close behind, pulled a device from her case and connected it to the podium's underside. The projection field snapped downward until Mara's face appeared across every surface in the hall. Sienna smiled without looking up. "Fixed." Several Concord technicians gasped as their secure podium network surrendered in under 6 seconds. Vera's crest flashed crimson. "You are tampering with sacred infrastructure." "We call that accessibility," Sienna said. Mara looked out across the convocation. "My name is Captain Mara Vance. I represent Earth. We did not come here as pets, specimens, curiosities, or children. We crossed the black current because we saw a door in the dark and decided the only unacceptable option was staying ignorant." A murmur moved through the hall. She continued, "We are not the largest species in this chamber. We do not possess your oldest technologies. We do not know your customs, your rivalries, or your laws. But we know this. Any civilization that mistakes unfamiliarity for weakness has survived too long behind walls." The murmur became sharp. Chancellor Vera stepped forward. "Brave phrasing does not equal qualification. The Concord Charter is precise. Recognition requires proof of independent transit, verified planetary defense capacity, cognitive sovereignty, and demonstrated environmental resilience. Your arrival was irregular. Your ship may have been thrown here by accident. Your minds may be vulnerable to influence. Your bodies may fail outside protected conditions." "They crossed the black current," Rogar said. "Unverified." Rogar's eyes darkened. Vera lifted both hands quickly. The law provides a remedy. Sienna stopped typing. Mara looked at her. What remedy? The Chancellor's fear transformed into something more dangerous. Confidence. The trial of unshielded passage. The reaction in the hall was immediate. Some delegates recoiled. Others leaned forward. The Koravi behind Rogar growled in unison. Rogar's voice dropped. That right was buried. Never repealed, Vera said. Any claimant whose transit method falls outside Concord standards must prove survival capacity in the original environmental substrate of the Crown. Sienna's eyes moved across her translated display. Captain, that means maintenance strata. Explain. This station was built around a captured fragment of dead planet, old tunnels, heavy machinery, radiation pockets, gravity faults, toxic atmosphere zones. Vera's crest shimmered with cruel satisfaction. The Understrada are not suitable for delicate organisms, but if humans are truly what the Highbreaker claims, they may pass through them and retrieve the original Concord seal from Foundation Vault 9. If they succeed, the law compels provisional recognition. And if we fail? Mara asked. Vera gave a graceful tilt of her head. The Crown has excellent reclamation systems. The hall waited. Mara turned to Rogar. Can your people help? No, he said. His jaw flexed. The right forbids outside intervention. Convenient. Yes. Rogar leaned lower. The Understrada are not empty. Things were sealed there when the Crown was young. Things the bright ones prefer to forget. Vera's eyes flashed. Superstitions. Rogar did not look away from Mara. Warnings. Mara absorbed that. Then she turned to her Marines. Ruiz. Corporal Della Ruiz stepped forward. Ma'am, you up for a walk? Ruiz smiled. Depends. Is it stupid? Probably. Then yes. Sienna closed her case. I'm coming. No. Yes. Sienna. If the vault is sealed by old Concord systems, you need me. If the atmosphere is unstable, you need me. If their definition of seal involves a biological lock, you need me. Also, I refuse to let you become a historical footnote because nobody brought a translator who knows how doors work. Mara stared at her for 1 second. Fine. Vera's satisfaction faltered. She had expected hesitation. Humans were becoming difficult to predict. The entrance to the Understrada lay beneath the convocation hall, behind 7 ceremonial barriers and 1 very practical blast door. As the humans prepared, the entire Concord watched. Their armor was not elegant. It had no living jewels, no song-reactive shields, no prayer-bonded membranes. It was hard, layered, modular, and ugly in the way survival equipment is ugly. Ceramic plates, Kevlar weave, myomer supports, sealed helmets, ammunition pouches, medical injectors, cutting tools, coil rifles, shotguns, a compact drone pack, enough batteries to offend every refined engineering tradition in the chamber. One Elirothi observer whispered that the humans looked like miners. The translator carried it to Ruiz. She grinned. That's a compliment where I'm from. The blast door opened. Darkness breathed out. Not metaphorical darkness. Physical darkness. Thick, stale air rolled from the opening carrying metal dust, fungal rot, ionized radiation, old oil, and something animal. Mara's suit alarms chimed. Sienna looked at her wrist display. Gravity inside is fluctuating between 0.6 and 1.4 Earth standard. Manageable. Atmosphere is corrosive in pockets. Helmet sealed. Radiation spikes. Dosimeters active. Movement signatures. Mara looked at her. Sienna swallowed. A lot of movement signatures. Behind them, Chancellor Vera spoke loudly enough for the hall feeds to capture. The rite begins when the claimants cross the threshold. It ends when they return with the seal, or when biological continuity ceases. Mara glanced back at Rogar. The Koravi warlord struck his chest with one fist. Not a farewell, a promise that he would remember. Mara stepped into the dark. The door shut behind them. The Understrada swallowed all light except what the humans brought. Their helmet lamps cut narrow tunnels through dust. The walls were not polished like the upper station. They were raw, black stone reinforced with ancient beams and half-melted machinery. Thick pipes ran overhead. Some pulsed with power. Others had burst centuries ago and hardened into mineral waterfalls. The floor tilted unpredictably, as if the station's elegant upper levels were built on the bones of something still shifting in its sleep. "Comms?" Mara asked. "Short range only," Sienna said. "The walls are eating signal. Resolute? Gone. Convocation feed. Still watching us, but delayed and distorted." Ruiz raised her rifle. Movement left. Everyone stopped. A shape flickered between broken pillars. Too fast to identify. Mara lifted one hand. The team spread silently. 6 humans became angles, shadows, overlapping lines of fire. The thing moved again. Then the ceiling opened. Creatures dropped from above in a shrieking cascade. They were pale, long-limbed and eyeless, with bodies like stretched cartilage wrapped around too many joints. Their mouths unfolded vertically, revealing rings of grinding teeth. They struck not like animals, but like tools designed by a cruel engineer for close spaces. The first one landed on Marine Okafor. It expected soft prey. Okafor slammed backward into a wall, absorbed the impact with his armor, and drove a short-barreled shotgun under its jaw. The blast turned its head into vapor and bone dust. "Contact!" Ruiz shouted. The tunnel erupted. Human weapons did not glow. They did not hum. They cracked like thunder trapped underground. Coil rounds punched through pale bodies, ricocheted off stone, shattered limbs, and filled the air with hot blood mist. The creatures came from vents, cracks, side passages, maintenance shafts. Too many. Too close. Mara fired 3 controlled bursts, dropped 2, ducked under a third, and drove her combat knife into the soft tissue beneath its ribs. It screamed in ultrasound. Her suit dampened it. She kicked the body away and kept moving. "Forward!" she ordered. "Do not get pinned!" A gravity surge hit. For half a second, the tunnel climbed to 1.7 Earth standard. Sienna gasped. One Marine dropped to a knee. The creatures slammed into the floor with wet cracks, their low-gravity bodies suddenly betrayed by mass they had never evolved to carry. Ruiz laughed once, breathless and savage. "Oh, they hate push-ups." The humans advanced. Not gracefully, not untouched, but relentlessly. Every meter cost ammunition, sweat, bruises, oxygen, and nerve. The creatures tried to overwhelm them with numbers. The humans answered with formation discipline. When the tunnel narrowed, they stacked. When the ceiling opened, they shifted lamps upward. When one creature played dead and lunged at Sienna, Mara caught it by the throat and crushed its windpipe against the wall with both hands before shooting it through the spine. Far above in the convocation hall, the feed stabilized long enough for the delegates to see. Small figures in dirty armor moving through impossible dark. Not fleeing, not begging, not calling for rescue. Solving the violence. Chancellor Vera watched with her crest folded tight. Beside her, Rogar stood motionless, but his 6 eyes burned. The first major obstacle was a shaft. It dropped straight down farther than the helmet lights could reach. The old bridge across it had collapsed, leaving only a twisted support beam spanning the gap. On the far side, a circular door bore symbols that Sienna identified as early Concord administrative code. "Foundation Vault 9 should be beyond that door," she said. Ruiz looked down the shaft. Something moved far below, something large enough to scrape stone. "Of course it is," she said. Mara clipped a line to the beam. "We cross one at a time." The beam groaned under Okafor first, but held, then Ruiz, then Sienna, moving slower, breath loud in the comms. Halfway across, the gravity dropped. Sienna's boots lifted from the beam. She grabbed for it and missed. Mara jumped. In low gravity, the motion launched her across the shaft faster than intended. She slammed into Sienna midair, caught her harness, and fired a tether spike into the far wall. The line went taut. Both women swung hard into the stone, armor scraping sparks. Below them, something unfolded in the darkness. A sound rose from the shaft, not a roar, but a wet mechanical grinding, followed by a rush of air as a massive shape climbed upward. Ruiz anchored herself on the far side and pulled. Okafor joined. The Marines hauled Mara and Sienna toward the ledge as the thing emerged beneath them. It was not one creature. It was many creatures fused together around old machinery, pale bodies grown through rusted service drones, jaws and limbs and cables braided into a climbing mass. Its mouths opened in sequence, each one singing a different frequency. Sienna screamed, not from fear, from pain. My suit's neural interface is spiking. The song hit the team like a migraine made of knives. Vision blurred. Balance failed. One Marine vomited inside his helmet and kept his seal locked through sheer discipline. Mara felt the sound digging behind her eyes, looking for the part of the brain that surrendered. It did not find much. "Audio filters," she barked. "Already maxed!" Sienna gasped. The fused creature climbed faster. Ruiz looked at the tether, then at the thing, then at Mara. "Captain, permission to be irresponsible." "Granted." Ruiz unclipped 2 grenades from her chest rig, slapped them together, armed both, waited 1 impossible second, and dropped them directly into the largest open mouth. The creature swallowed by reflex. Ruiz grabbed Sienna's harness and shouted, "Pull!" The grenades detonated inside the climbing mass. The shaft filled with white light. The shockwave threw everyone flat against the far ledge. Chunks of pale meat and machine plating blasted upward, struck the ceiling, and rained down into the abyss. The song died mid-note. Mara lay on her back for 2 seconds, staring at dust drifting through her helmet lamp. Then she said, "Irresponsible approved." Ruiz groaned. "Putting that on my review." At the circular door, Sienna worked fast. Her hands trembled, but not enough to slow her. She translated symbols, patched power, bypassed locks, argued with an ancient interface that considered her fingers too small and her species legally impossible. Finally, the door woke. A voice older than the modern Concorde echoed through the tunnel. "Claim an identity unrecognized," Sienna typed. "No kidding. Submit lineage song. Don't have one. Submit sovereign crystal. Don't have that either. Submit memory offering." Mara looked at her. "What's a memory offering?" Sienna scanned. "Some kind of neural imprint. It wants proof we're independent minds." "Can it hurt you?" "Probably." "No." "Mara." "No." Sienna looked up sharply. "You brought me because doors matter. This is a door." Before Mara could stop her, Sienna pulled a cable from her case and connected it to the neural port at the base of her helmet. The other end went into the door. Her body went rigid. "Sienna!" The tunnel vanished from Sienna's eyes. She stood suddenly in her childhood kitchen in Lagos, rain hammering the roof, her father teaching her how to repair a radio during a blackout. Then the image tore away. She was in university, alone in a lab, failing the same simulation for the 43rd time and starting it again. Then she was on the Resolute, watching Earth shrink into a blue coin and wondering whether humanity had built a starship or a very expensive tomb. The door searched her. It expected a prepared ceremonial memory, a polished identity, a clean lineage song curated for ancient systems. Instead, it received human life, contradiction, grief, laughter at funerals, equations written on napkins, hunger, pride, regret, stubbornness, love expressed badly and too late, nations arguing while building one ship together because the dark had dared them to come closer, a species with no single song, only billions of dissonant voices somehow becoming a chorus when extinction looked their way. The door recoiled, then opened. Sienna collapsed. Mara caught her. The vault beyond was small, almost disappointingly small. At its center hovered a black metal seal the size of a dinner plate, marked with the first symbol of the Concorde, a circle of many lights surrounding one flame. Ruiz stepped in first, rifle raised. No attack came. Mara reached for the seal. The moment her fingers touched it, the vault lights turned red. Sienna, barely conscious, looked at the wall. "Oh, that's not good." "What?" "This vault wasn't locked to keep people out." The floor trembled. A sound moved through the Understrada beneath them. Deep, vast, awakening. Sienna's face went pale. It was locked to keep something in. The convocation feed died. For 3 seconds, the entire crown of Sol saw only static. Then every alarm on the station began to scream. In the convocation hall, Chancellor Vera shouted for order and failed. Delegates demanded explanations. Security platforms rose. Defense drones deployed. The central light flickered between emergency codes. Rogar seized the nearest Elirothi engineer by the front of his robes and lifted him off the floor. What is below them? The engineer's colors cycled through panic. Old containment. For what? I do not know. Rogar tightened his grip. Chancellor Vera answered from behind him, voice hollow. The Null. The hall froze a second time. Even the Korovai guards reacted. Rogar turned slowly. You kept Null beneath a diplomatic station. They were extinct, Vera whispered. The station shook. Far below, Mara's team ran. They did not know the word Null. They did not know that 8,000 years earlier, before the luminous Concord had become luminous, before its delegates had learned to hide cruelty beneath law, the Null had been their first terror. A species without fixed bodies, a predatory intelligence that lived in electromagnetic fields, wore machines like skin, and hollowed out civilizations by turning their infrastructure against them. The Concord had defeated them by trapping the last Null minds inside the foundation systems of the Crown. Then, over centuries, the story had become myth, then embarrassment, then erased history. And now a human hand had removed the seal. The Understrada lights turned one by one toward the humans, not on, toward. Every camera, every sensor, every old maintenance eye focused on them with sudden hunger. A voice spoke through the walls, small, warm things. Ruiz raised her rifle. I hate that. The floor ahead split open. Ancient repair machines crawled out, but they no longer looked like machines. Their limbs bent the wrong way. Their tools had been sharpened into claws. Their bodies sparked with blue-white intelligence moving through them like trapped lightning. Mara fired. The first machine stumbled but did not fall. Armor-piercing, she shouted. The tunnel became a gauntlet. Machines attacked from every surface. Doors slammed shut. Gravity surged and vanished. Pipes burst, spraying corrosive vapor. The Null spoke through emergency speakers in overlapping voices, some alien, some copied from human comms, some wearing Sienna's voice, some wearing Mara's. Captain, stop running. Captain, your crew is dying. Captain, Earth will not remember you. Mara ignored it. A maintenance drone slammed into Okafor from the side and drove a spinning cutter toward his neck. Ruiz shot the cutter off, then kicked the drone into a gravity fault. It rose, crushed flat against the ceiling, then dropped as the field reversed. Ammo check, Mara called. Low, said Okafor. Low, said Ruiz. Very low, said another Marine. Sienna, breathing hard, clutched the seal under one arm. The Null are moving upward through station systems. They're not just chasing us, they're spreading. Can the Concord stop them? Sienna looked at the flickering walls. The Concord built its entire station on top of them. That was the mid-story truth, though none of the humans had time to appreciate its shape. They had not entered a trial. They had opened a prison, and the civilization laughing above them had been sitting on a bomb for thousands of years. Mara stopped at a junction. Ruiz nearly collided with her. Captain? The left passage led upward toward the trial entrance. The right passage descended deeper. Sienna stared at her scanner. Mara, why are you looking that way? Because the Null signal is strongest below. Yes, which is why we should go up. If we go up, it follows us. It's already following us. If we go up with the seal, the right ends. Doors open, crowds, networks, ships docked across the station, millions of bodies and every system connected. Ruiz understood first. Her grin faded. Mara looked down the right passage. If we go down, we find its core. Sienna stared at her. That is not the mission. No, that thing almost conquered these people when they were more advanced than we are now. Apparently, they forgot to finish the job. Mara. The captain's voice softened. Sienna, if that thing reaches the docking network, it can ride ships out of here. It can reach Earth. That ended the argument, not because Sienna agreed, because the word Earth changed the weight of every corridor. Mara opened a channel not to the convocation, not to the station, but to the Resolute. Static answered. "Pike, this is Vance. If you can hear me, lock the ship down. Physically disconnect from station systems. Cut every data line. Hard vacuum between us and them if you have to. Do not let anything board." Static. Then Pike's voice, thin and broken. "Captain, say again. You are unreadable. Station systems are wait. Our dock clamps just moved by themselves." "Cut loose. We're inside a reclamation bay." "Then make a new exit." There was a pause. Pike said, "Copy that." Above, in the refuse bay, the Resolute fired maneuvering thrusters inside the station. Every alarm in that sector achieved religious intensity. Docking clamps tore free. The ship scraped against the bay wall, ripped through 3 layers of ornamental plating, and used its forward rail assist system to punch a hole through the outer door. Atmosphere exploded into space. The Resolute tumbled clear, trailing debris, stabilized, and turned its ugly, scarred nose back toward the crown. Lieutenant Pike looked at the tactical officer. "Load tungsten." "But we're at a diplomatic station." "I am aware." Far below, Mara's team descended. The deeper passages were older than the Concord's beauty, older than its laws. The walls changed from machinery-reinforced stone to something black and glassy, veined with silver. Sienna said it looked like impact melt, a piece of dead planet captured and built over. The Null attacks changed too. Less machine, more mind. The first hallucination struck Okafor. He saw his daughter standing in the tunnel without a helmet, asking why he had left again. He froze for half a second. Half a second was long enough for a machine limb to spear toward his chest. Mara tackled him out of the way. Ruiz fired until the limb shattered. "Not real!" Mara shouted. Okafor's voice broke. "I know." "Then move." He moved. The Null tried Sienna next. It filled her display with impossible equations, answers to questions humanity had not yet learned how to ask. Clean energy, perfect translation, gravity control, immortality through copied consciousness. The price was simple: a handshake, a link, a door left open. Sienna smashed her own display with the butt of her pistol. Mara glanced back. Sienna's breathing shook. "I prefer peer review." The Null tried Mara last. It did not offer power. It offered rest. For one step, the tunnel became quiet. The alarms faded. The armor weight vanished. Mara stood on a beach she had visited once as a child, before the sea walls went up, before storms took the town, before her mother died in a hospital corridor during the second heat collapse. The sky was blue. The air smelled of salt. Someone behind her said her name the way only her mother had said it. Mara stopped. Ruiz's voice crackled through the illusion. "Captain." Mara closed her eyes. She let herself feel it. The longing hit harder than fear ever had. Then she opened her eyes and stepped forward. The beach burned away. "You don't get to wear my dead," she said. The passage opened into the core chamber. It was enormous, a hollow sphere carved into the captured planetary fragment, filled with suspended rings of ancient machinery. At the center hung a black lattice of impossible geometry, a cage made of gravity, light, and old hatred. Inside it moved something without shape, a storm of blue-white minds pressing against cracks that spread wider with every pulse. Around the chamber, thousands of cables rose upward into the station. The Null were not escaping through tunnels. They were escaping through everything. Sienna stared upward. "This is the containment core. Can you reseal it?" "With what?" Mara held up the seal. Sienna shook her head. That was the lock, not the power source. Removing it started a release sequence. The original system is collapsing. "Can we destroy it?" "If we had a warship cannon in here." Mara looked at Ruiz. Ruiz looked back. "I left mine in my other pants." Then the comms burst alive. "Captain Vance," came Rogar's voice, distorted but unmistakable. "Your signal has returned." Mara looked up sharply. "Highbreaker, the Null are real." "I know. They're in the station systems. You need to evacuate the crown." "The Concord refuses. They believe evacuation will cause panic." Mara almost laughed. "That ship sailed." Rogar's voice dropped. "Tell me how to reach you." "You can't. The right is ash." A violent impact shook the chamber from somewhere far above. Rogar continued. "We are cutting our way down." Mara looked at the Null core. Its cage fractured again. Blue-white light spilled through the crack and struck one of the suspended rings. The ring awakened, turned, and aimed a beam upward. The station screamed. Sienna grabbed Mara's arm. It just took control of one of the Crown's defense lances. In orbit, the Crown of Sol fired on its own ships. A merchant ark split in half, spilling atmosphere and glittering debris. An embassy cruiser raised shields too late and vanished in a sphere of white fire. Panic tore through the orbital lanes. Thousands of vessels tried to flee. The station's docking systems locked many in place. The Null spoke through every frequency. Open, open, open. The Resolute was small enough to evade the first lance. Barely. Pike gripped his chair as the bridge bucked. Return fire. The tactical officer stared at him. Against the station? Against the lance emitter. Precision shot. We're using kinetic rounds inside a populated orbital structure. Then don't miss. The Resolute fired. A tungsten slug crossed the distance in silence and struck the defense lance housing at a fraction of relativistic speed. The emitter vanished. The station segment around it blossomed outward in a controlled wound of metal and light. On the bridge, the humans cheered for half a second. Then 3 more lances turned toward them. Pike whispered, "Oh." Far below, Sienna watched the power surge. "Captain, the core is waking faster. Every system it captures gives it more processing power." "How long?" "Minutes." Mara looked around the chamber. Ancient machinery, gravity rings, cables, a collapsing cage, a lock with no power. Human weapons too small to kill a god in a machine, but humans had never been especially good at accepting the intended use of things. "Sienna," Mara said slowly, "the containment cage is built from gravity fields." "Yes." "What happens if we overload the station's gravity control from inside the cage?" Sienna stared at her, then stared at the rings, then back at Mara. "Oh. Good O or bad O? Catastrophic O?" "Useful catastrophic." Sienna's eyes moved faster. "Maybe, if we can force every local gravity generator to invert at once, the field collapse could implode the core lattice. Not explode, implode. It would crush the Null containment medium into a singular compression event." Ruiz frowned. "That sounds made up." "It's extremely real and extremely fatal." "To it or to us?" "Yes." Mara nodded. "How do we do it?" Sienna looked toward a control dais suspended on a narrow bridge leading almost into the core cage. "Manual access there, but the system will resist. It needs constant input. Someone has to stay connected until the inversion completes." Nobody spoke. They all understood. Mara did not make a speech. She simply handed the Concord seal to Sienna. "Take this up," Sienna recoiled. "No. That is an order. No." "Sienna. No, don't you dare make your command voice the last thing I hear from you." Ruiz stepped between them. "Captain, with respect, I can do it. You don't know the system. I can hold a cable. You can also get them out." Ruiz's face tightened. Mara looked at each Marine. "The Concord needs proof. Earth needs witnesses. Somebody has to carry the story home." Okafor said quietly, "Captain, Earth also needs you." Mara's expression softened for the briefest moment. "Earth has 8 billion stubborn replacements." The chamber shook again. A crack opened in the Null cage. Something like lightning reached through and seized a dead machine on the bridge. It unfolded into a spider of blades and rushed them. Ruiz met it head on. Her rifle ran dry after 4 shots. She threw it aside, drew her sidearm, emptied it, then tackled the machine off the walkway and drove both boots into its central processor as they fell. Her tether snapped tight, swinging her back into the bridge hard enough to crack a rib. "I hate old buildings," she wheezed. Mara lifted her. "Move." They ran for the dais. Sienna connected her tools. The system rejected her. She bypassed. It adapted. She rerouted. It burned the route. She swore in 3 human languages and 1 recently learned Elirothi insult. The gravity ring spun faster. Blue-white Null light filled the chamber. Mara stood guard, firing short bursts at machines crawling along the cables. "How long?" she asked. "Too long. That's not a time. Then stop asking time-shaped questions. A new voice entered the comms. Chancellor Vera. Human Captain, the convocation demands your status. Mara shot a drone through the face. Busy. The station is under attack. Yes. The Null are breaching upper systems. Yes. You must return with the seal immediately so the rite may conclude and lawful command may be established. Mara paused. Even with death climbing toward them and ancient evil waking in the walls, the absurdity found her. Chancellor, she said, your house is on fire and you're asking for paperwork. There was no answer. Then Rogar's voice cut in. Mara Vance, we are 2 levels above you. Resistance is heavy. Don't come down. A pause. Explain. We're going to implode the core. Another pause, longer this time. That will kill anything near it. Yes. Leave. Can't. A low growl filled the comm. Kin found is not kin spent. Mara smiled sadly while firing her last magazine. On Earth sometimes it is. Sienna looked up. Her eyes were wet and furious. I have the inversion sequence, but the controls require biological continuity. It has to read a living nervous system through the entire collapse. Then plug me in. Mara, now. Sienna's hands shook as she connected the neural cable to Mara's suit. The moment the system touched Mara's mind, pain detonated behind her eyes. Not sharp pain, total pain. Gravity data, station maps, Null intrusion patterns, alien code, ancient safeguards, and dying machinery all poured through a human nervous system never designed to carry a city-sized prison. Mara fell to one knee. Blood filled her mouth. Her heart hammered once, twice, then found rhythm. The system asked for authorization in a language older than the Concord. Sienna translated through tears. It wants sovereign intent. Mara looked at the Null core. The blue-white thing pressed against the cage, now aware of her. 1,000 stolen voices whispered at once. Little warm thing, you cannot hold us. Your world is far. Your species is young. You are tired. Mara breathed in. Earth came to her then, not as an illusion, but as memory, rain on asphalt, hospital lights, the roar of rocket engines over Cape Canaveral, dust storms on Mars, children watching the Resolute launch from crowded rooftops, engineers sleeping under desks, farmers sending food to shipyards, old enemies signing the same hull plate, her mother's voice, not as bait, as inheritance. Mara smiled with blood on her teeth. Sovereign intent, she whispered. Denied. Sienna slammed the final command. The gravity rings inverted. Across the crown of Sol, every being felt the station lurch. In orbit, ships broke free as docking clamps failed. The Resolute spun away from 3 converging lance beams, just as their emitters sagged under gravitational distortion. The convocation hall lost artificial gravity entirely. Delegates floated screaming among ceremonial banners and broken platforms. Rogar, 2 levels above the core, drove all 4 claws into the floor and roared as the corridor tried to fold around him. In the core chamber, the Null screamed. This time everyone heard it, not through speakers. Through bone, through metal, through memory. The cage collapsed inward. Blue-white light became a sphere. The sphere became a point. Every machine in the chamber clawed toward Mara, desperate to sever the connection. Ruiz and the Marines held the bridge with knives, empty rifles, broken drones, and their own bodies. Sienna tried to pull Mara free, but the neural cable had fused. "Mara!" she screamed. The captain looked at her. There was no time for final speeches, no grand farewell. Mara simply said, "Tell them we didn't kneel." Then the core imploded. The crown of Sol went dark. For 9 seconds, the most important station in the known galaxy became a silent silhouette above the violet gas giant. No lights, no weapons, no comms, no gravity, no law. Then emergency power returned in trembling bands. The Null signal was gone. Foundation Vault 9 no longer existed. Neither did 3 surrounding strata, 11 ancient containment rings, 4,000 kilometers of corrupted infrastructure, and 1 human captain. But the crown still stood. The ships in orbit still had minds of their own. The species of the conquered still lived. and in the dark below the convocation hall, a Koravi warlord dug through molten stone with his bare hands until his claws bled sparks. They found Ruiz first, alive, then Okafor, alive, then 2 more Marines, wounded, burned, concussed, but alive. They found Sienna Holt beside the fused remains of the control dais, clutching the Concord seal in both arms like it was the last piece of the universe. Her suit was cracked, her eyes were unfocused. She kept repeating the same words. She stayed, she stayed, she stayed. Rogar lifted her as gently as something his size could lift anything. "Where is Mara Vance?" he asked. Sienna looked at him. The answer moved through the rescue team without needing translation. Hours later, the convocation hall reconvened under emergency light. Its perfect architecture was broken, its floating platforms drifted unevenly, its ceremonial banners were torn. The central speaking light flickered. Delegates who had arrived polished and radiant now bore soot, bandages, fear, and a new humility no tailor could disguise. The human survivors entered without escort. Not from the lesser gallery, from the central doors. Sienna walked first, supported by Ruiz, carrying the black Concord seal. Her face was pale, her eyes were red, her suit still bore the scorch marks of the Understrada. Behind her walked the Marines. Behind them walked Highbreaker Rogar and every Koravi on the crown. No one laughed, no one whispered, no one compared their size. Chancellor Vera waited at the speaking light. Her crest was colorless. Sienna stopped before her and held out the seal. Foundation Vault 9, retrieved. Vera stared at it. Her hands did not move. Sienna's voice sharpened. "Take it." The Chancellor took the seal. The ancient systems of the convocation, damaged but alive, scanned the object. Across every surface in the hall, one verdict appeared. Trial complete, recognition compelled, but nobody applauded. The words were too small for what had happened. Vera looked at Sienna. Whatever arrogance remained in her had been burned down to something raw and frightened. "Your captain," she said quietly, "saved the crown." Sienna shook her head. "No," she said. "She saved everyone who would have been next." The silence that followed did what laughter could not. It honored. Rogar stepped forward. "The conquered will speak her name." Vera bowed her head. "The conquered will remember Captain Mara Vance." Sienna's eyes hardened. Memory is not enough. The Chancellor looked up. Sienna stepped onto the speaking platform. It adjusted to her height immediately. Somewhere in the damaged system, a human accessibility patch had survived. Her face appeared across the hall. "You wanted proof of humanity," she said. "You got it. Not because we are fearless. We are not. Not because we are stronger than you. Many of you can lift more, live longer, think faster, build prettier machines. Captain Vance did not die because humans are better at dying. She died because we are very, very difficult to convince that survival belongs only to us." No one moved. "We came here asking for a place in your civilization. Then we discovered your civilization had buried a monster under its own throne and called the grave a foundation. So understand this clearly. Earth will not be your pet. Earth will not be your curiosity. Earth will not be your disposable primitive ally." Her voice broke once. She forced it steady. "Earth will stand with those who stand with us. Earth will fight what threatens the living. Earth will argue, build, bleed, improvise, offend your engineers, break your furniture, rewrite your interfaces, and probably terrify your committees." A sound moved through the Koravi. Not laughter, approval. Sienna continued. "But we will not kneel." Rogar struck his fist against his chest. The boom rolled across the hall. Every Koravi followed. Then, slowly, impossibly, others joined. A crystalline delegate tapped 2 limbs together, producing a clear, ringing note. An aquatic envoy struck the side of its tank. A feather-crested philosopher bowed. A trade minister who had wagered against humans lowered his eyes. One by one, the chamber filled with sound. Not the sound of mockery, the sound of recognition. Chancellor Vera turned toward the central system. "By authority of the luminous Concord, under charter law and witnessed by the convocation, humanity is granted sovereign recognition, protected transit, embassy rights, and full provisional standing." Rogar growled. Vera swallowed, full standing. The hall accepted it. Far above, aboard the damaged Resolute, Lieutenant Pike heard the announcement through a crackling channel and sat back in the command chair. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he reached up and touched the brass coin above the console. "Captain," he whispered, "we got the chair." Earth learned of Mara Vance's death 17 days later. The message crossed new relays built in haste by guilty conquered engineers and guarded by Corvi warships that parked above Earth's moon without asking permission. At first, humanity did what humanity always did with impossible news. It argued, it doubted, it demanded evidence. It cried in private. It turned one person into a symbol, and then fought over the symbol because grief is messy and humans are worse. But the footage ended most arguments. Mara Vance, standing in a chamber beneath an alien throne, plugged into a dying prison, blood on her face, saying 4 words that became carved into schools, ships, memorial walls, and eventually the first human embassy on the crown. "Tell them we didn't kneel." Within 6 months, Earth changed faster than any Concorde model predicted. Not smoothly, never smoothly. Factories retooled. Universities exploded with xenobiology programs. Children learned the names of species that had laughed at them and species that had saluted them. Old rivalries did not vanish, but they became smaller beneath a larger sky. The first Corvi delegation to Earth landed in the Sahara because no other arrival zone had enough open space, and because Rogar insisted on feeling the human sun without filters. He stood under it for 7 minutes. Then he looked at the horizon and said, "Your world is bright and angry." The human ambassador replied, "You should see it during election season." Rogar did not understand the joke, but he laughed anyway because Mara Vance had taught him that humans often hid blades inside humor. The Concorde changed too, more slowly, more painfully. The Crown's Understrada were opened, studied, repaired, and in some places mourned. The old histories of the Null were restored. Chancellor Vera resigned before she could be removed, though not before issuing a formal apology that took 3 hours and satisfied almost nobody. The lesser gallery where humanity had first been placed was dismantled. In its place, the Concorde built a memorial from Earth steel and Corvi basalt. It was not tall. That was deliberate. A simple human-height doorway stood at its center. Above it were words translated into every known language. Stone under pressure becomes blade. But peace did not last long. It rarely does after a door opens. The death of the Null core sent a signal beyond the cartographer's veil, not a message, a death cry, a final burst of ancient electromagnetic pain that crossed regions of space the Concorde had long ago marked as empty. Something heard it. 3 years after humanity joined the stars, listening posts along the Black Current began going silent. First 1, then 6, then 20. No wreckage, no distress calls, no debris. Only stations found intact, powered, pressurized, and empty, their crews gone as if erased from the inside of their own shadows. The Conquered called emergency session. This time, when the human delegation entered, no one laughed. Ambassador Sienna Holt walked with a cane now. Her left hand still trembled from nerve damage sustained in the core chamber. She wore a dark suit, not armor, but every delegate remembered that she had once told an ancient door that humanity had no lineage song and opened it anyway. Rogar stood beside her, older, heavier with scars, his broken horns capped in black iron. At the center of the convocation, a hologram displayed the dead listening posts. Sienna studied the pattern. Pike, now captain of the rebuilt Resolute, appeared by remote projection from patrol space. Whatever's doing this is avoiding major lanes. It knows sensor coverage. It knows response times. Chancellor Vera's successor, a cautious being named Elirothi, spoke from the central light. Could remnants of the Null have survived? No, Sienna said. Every head turned. She leaned on her cane. The Null wanted systems, infrastructure, control. This is different. This is predation. Rogar's eyes narrowed. Something from beyond. A Corvi scout transmission played, static, breathing, a glimpse of a corridor, dark fluid climbing walls, a voice whispering in a language no translator knew. Then one clear image, a shape outside a viewport, enormous and thin, unfolding wings made of black filament against the stars. The hall held its breath. Alan Thigh looked toward Sienna, not down at her, toward her. What does humanity advise? There it was, the reversal no law could manufacture. Once, humans had begged to be heard. Now the galaxy waited for the small ones to speak. Sienna looked at the image. Fear touched her face, but did not own it. "We send scouts," she said. "Mixed crews. Human, Koravi. Anyone willing to learn ugly lessons fast. We assume it is smarter than us until proven otherwise. We disconnect critical systems from shared networks. We stop pretending old maps prove empty space is empty. And we prepare civilians for evacuation before pride gets them killed." A trade delegate raised a trembling limb. "And if this force cannot be reasoned with?" Sienna's expression became very tired, then very human. "Then we find out what it wants," she said. "We find out what it fears, and if it threatens Earth or anyone under our protection." She looked at Rogar. The old warlord smiled, not kindly. Sienna finished. "We teach it our customs." The first joint expedition beyond the Black Current launched from lunar orbit. It was not a conquered fleet. It was something new. Human destroyers with ugly kinetic spines. Koravi breaker ships armored like moving fortresses. Elirothi medical arcs. Crystal sensor craft, aquatic life vaults, drone carriers, fuel barges, rescue ships, arguments in 20 languages, engineering compromises that made everyone unhappy and somehow worked better than expected. At the front flew the UNSS Vance, human-built, Koravi armored, conquered, sanctioned, a ship shaped not like elegance but intent. On its bridge, Captain Arjun Pike stood beneath the same brass coin that had once hung above Mara's command console. It had survived the reclamation bay, the defense lances, and 3 refits. No engineer was allowed to remove it. Rogar stood beside him, too large for any chair and unwilling to use one anyway. "You are certain your species wants to go first?" the warlord asked. Pike looked at the dark wound of space ahead. "No." Rogar's eyes shifted. "No? No, we are not certain. We're terrified. We're underfunded. Half my crew thinks this ship is cursed. Our politicians are already arguing over what to call the mission. And my chief engineer says if we fire the main gun in full drive at the same time, there is a 6% chance we briefly become weather." Rogar stared at him. Pike smiled. "But we're going first anyway." The Koravi warlord was silent for a moment. Then he began to laugh. Deep, rolling, thunderous. Across the bridge, humans smiled without taking their eyes off their stations. The Black Current opened before them, vast and lightless. Somewhere beyond it waited a new terror, something old enough to hear the death of a buried god, something patient enough to erase worlds quietly, something that had not yet learned the difference between prey and a species that kept walking into the dark because fear was never a good enough reason to stop. Pike touched the brass coin. Then he gave the order. The fleet crossed, and behind them, across the worlds of the Concord, children of 1,000 species watched the human ships vanish into the impossible night. They had been taught many things since Mara Vance broke the old story of the galaxy. They had been taught that size was not strength, that elegance was not wisdom, that law without courage was decoration, that some species build beautiful walls and some species kick holes through them because someone might be trapped on the other side. Once the galaxy had looked at humanity and seen a small, crude thing that did not belong among giants. Now, when the darkness moved, the giants looked for the small ships first, because humans did not shine the brightest, they did not live the longest, they did not speak the oldest languages or build the prettiest machines. But when the door opened, when the alarm screamed, when the ancient thing woke beneath the floor and everyone else remembered reasons to wait, humans stepped forward with shaking hands, ugly tools, impossible hearts, and the unbearable stubbornness of a world that had tried to kill them from the beginning and failed. The galaxy had once called them debris, then specimens, then claimants, then allies. But in the centuries that followed, when new civilizations asked why the great fleets of the Concord always left a place at the front for the compact iron ships of Earth, the answer was never complicated. It was spoken in Koravi war halls, Elirothi schools, lunar shipyards, and on the rebuilt Crown of Sol beneath a human-height doorway made of steel. Because when the universe grows teeth, humanity does not kneel.